Hello and welcome to the Mill. I am your host, Dusty Crane, and this week I thought we'd talk a little bit about Tapestry. It's been quite a week for Tapestry, hasn't it? We went from eagerly awaiting the pre-order window to not even making it out of the pre-order without Jamie selling out his pre-order copies. Now, I want to be careful not to say that it is sold out because that is not what happened here. Jamie set aside, only Jamie knows how many copies, and his webmaster and probably Alan's. I guess only a few people know how many copies actually went on sale during that pre-order window. The wide speculation seems to be about 10,000 copies, which would leave about 15,000 copies to go through distribution. So your friendly local game store has a copy for you if you missed this pre-order window, or if you just prefer doing business with your friendly local game store. Without question, it was a little bit of an issue with folks on BGG, and I'm not sure if there really was a right way to do this. I think probably Stonemaier Games has reached that level where there's going to be people who either think that this way is perfect or that there's something else at work here, and you just got to kind of let it go. I know as a Stonemaier ambassador and somebody who is a big fan of Jamie and Stonemaier Games, it's sometimes pretty hard to see somebody that you admire or that you like their work dragged through the mud and worst case allegations sent at them. But that's, I guess, anymore, that's just a part of being or supporting any board game company that has, I guess, the level of visibility that Stonemaier Games does. But let's not talk about doom and gloom, because however many people got their pre-orders in, you have copies of Tapestry coming to you, and some people have already received them. In fact, we're starting to see that on both BGG and on the Tapestry Facebook group. The Tapestry Facebook group has already started an Easter egg post where you can post the Easter eggs that you found. Tyson, he was looking for Easter eggs with the last release we had here, and he is back at it with the modular board, and he is back at it again with Tapestry, and he's found stuff from either like a Pac-Man Lake and Chain Chomp all the way to R2-D2 and Captain America's shield, and I think Josh had posted Thor's hammer. So there are all kinds of goodies to be found in the Tapestry art. So all of that said, this is all stuff that we've kind of talked about. Also stuff that has been mentioned either in review copies or reviewers that have made their videos, or people that have just kind of run through and showed you what that game looks like, including myself. Kind of a side note here, my son Josh and I played a game of Tapestry for you guys last week, and it has been wildly successful by my standards. I mean, other YouTubers would look at it and wonder what happened and why they fell off. But I was pretty excited about what I've seen so far. But more importantly than that, I appreciate the very kind words for my son and I. And we've had requests for other videos, and if I can pin that boy down, I think he'd enjoy doing it. And we had a good time filming that for you, and he's just a busy kid. I'd love to see him too. It's not just you guys. But I did want to do something a little different this week, and so I actually posted out on the Tapestry Facebook group, and I said, I'm going to go on the mill and I'm going to talk about Tapestry. So what questions you guys have. And so they didn't have a whole lot of time to answer. I gave them about an hour, and then I had to come down here and do this. But I do have some questions, so I'm going to go ahead and get to those. The first question that was asked by Joshua, not my Joshua, another Joshua, was, what are your thoughts on the randomness of the Tapestry cards? And boy, that's been a little bit of an issue, hasn't it? I personally don't mind. I think it actually tells kind of a funny story. And in the playthrough that my son and I played, we kind of joked about that we had already, I'm in era 2, and I draw a Tapestry card that's the Age of Sails, and I'm already out on the deep seas and presumably doing some exploring, and I have not yet discovered rafts, or with the tech cards that are on the side, haven't yet discovered nails. And maybe that's what this question actually was. Maybe it was how I felt about the randomness of the tech cards, or maybe he did mean Tapestry cards. But as it relates to the Tapestry cards, I don't really mind about that either. I don't mind that, I went right into, so in my game, I went to Age of Sail. Another game, I saw somebody, or I think Josh went immediately from fire to capitalism, to diplomacy, to, was his last one Tyranny? I don't remember. But it really doesn't faze me. I like the story that's told. It's almost like Bizarro Land in the very best way. I mean it that way. That it kind of tells a unique story that doesn't match necessarily how we have seen history play out, because this isn't Earth. And so maybe there is a case to be made for somehow maybe you discovered some other kind of adhesive for your drone assassins and never encountered nails. But it really hasn't fazed me. I think it tells kind of a funny, almost like Flintstones like story in that regard. Steve asked me to please melt an economy building, and I will not be doing that. Let's see here. Oh boy, I'm so sorry. I'm probably going to butcher your name. Yusi? I'm going to go with Yusi. Have you covered the Shadow Empire yet? Would be nice to hear more about it and the regular Automa. So the Shadow Empire, if you are unfamiliar, is something that you can add to the two-player games to kind of also run down the tracks. So it's not just you or your opponent that are taking these landscape buildings. If you watch the playthrough, you saw Josh take quite a few of those landscape buildings. What the Shadow Empire does is really their only job, both in the Automa. It's a little different in the Automa. I guess I'll cover that. But when you're playing with the Shadow Empire for two players, basically you're using the Automa cards, a subset of them, the first 18, I believe, first 12, and it's basically just telling you which track the Shadow Empire would like to progress down, and you have some charts that say, hey, if you're going this way or you're going that way. Basically, it's just telling you where to place the Shadow Empire's tokens, so that it is hopefully, if you're not getting those landscape buildings, hopefully it's getting there before your opponent is. So that's the Shadow Empire's job. It doesn't collect victory points. It doesn't do anything other than race down the tracks. And when you are using the Shadow Empire with the autonomy components, when you're playing solo, when it gets a building first, it gives it to the Automa. So the Automa is just gathering a bunch of buildings from you, because the Automa is moving. Also, the Shadow Empire is moving. It can be tricky to get those buildings outside of your preferred tracks, or the tracks that you kind of have decided to focus on, which is I think is very accurate. And if you are playing games with 3, 4, or 5 players. So I do like the Shadow Empire. We did get some requests to play a 2-player game with the Shadow Empire, or just play with a 3rd player. And I would like to be able to do that for you guys soon. I like the inclusion of the Shadow Empire for kind of clogging up the board. I think it runs really nice right along kind of the same card play idea as with the Euphoria Automa, which I really thought was pretty clever too. All right, let's see here. A question a comment from Mary. I'd love to see you and your son play another game with different starting civilizations. Well, I think if we do get that Shadow Empire out here very soon, that is a guarantee. We don't want to show you the same stuff twice. Nathan says, when playing with two players, how badly do you wish you had just one more player? You know, I really don't. I think with two players, you're moving at such a nice clip that you almost get a little spoiled. You can kind of get in your own head and kind of pay attention to what you're doing and put together a game plan, and the turns kind of come to you pretty quick. I think it might be kind of cool to see, one of those, see the mat or the map kind of fill up a little bit. I think it might we only played one 4-player game, but it might be interesting to see a situation where when I'm actually talking about my neighbors in game as it relates to the person on my left, on my right, if there was a situation where these two on my left and right have not met a certain condition that I need for maybe one of my tech cards or something, and that non-neighbor hasn't already has, like, I'd be like, man, if I just moved one seat over, I wouldn't have this issue. I think that might be kind of cool, but having played a 4-player game, there's really, it was our first game, so I don't want to say anything about downtime. That's definitely not fair, because even with it being our first time, there wasn't a lot of downtime, but we were kind of explaining what was going on as we played, and asking questions and checking the rules. And so I'd like to try it again, but when I'm playing two players, I don't feel like I'm missing anything. James says, tips on teaching, anything that I missed while learning the rules to look out for. Yeah, have you seen that video? When teaching the game, I really like the way the income the income step is a separate thing. I like that you learn about, okay, these things are covered. This is my income. Oh, if I take this building, here's something new that I've gained. I think that's super helpful for teaching, in saying that, listen, you're going to get some starting resources. We'll get to that in a minute, but the way you earn these is the same every single time. Now, what I didn't do in my game, I didn't want to, actually, I don't have one in handy. What I didn't do in my game that I played on video that I really wish that I would have focused on early on is right along the side of your player mat, there is a little diagram that says, steps to take for the income phase. And the very top one is your civilization card, and then the next one is play a tapestry card, and the next one is upgrade and victory points. And if you look next to each one of those, there's numbers. And so for the very first income turn, you're not doing anything with civilization. There's no number 1 there. You're not doing anything with you're not playing a tapestry card. There's no 1 in that box. And the very last step is just gain income. So if in the game that I played online for you guys, I was talking to my son, and I said, okay, so you don't have any completed rows or columns, and so you're not going to get victory points for that. You don't have any tech cards yet. I shouldn't have even talked about that, because it wasn't relevant. It wasn't in that list of what you're doing in the income phase. So I would say pay close attention to that. The second thing I would say is get yourself in the habit of, and it sounds pretty obvious, but get yourself in the habit of saying, I am going to pay for this, I am going to gain this, and then you gain whatever that is, and then I am going to pay for the bonus or not pay for the bonus. Because I found a couple of times, and you see it in our video too, where I'm like, you paid for that, right? Or did I already pay for this? So like, try and get yourself in, kind of like the rule book had mentioned, when you're doing an advanced turn, pay for what you're doing, gain the resource, gain the benefit. The rule book is very, very tight. It's very clean. It's very small. And remarkably, it's totally fine that it's that way. I didn't find myself having too terribly many questions after reading it, but pay close attention on that back page where it kind of lists a couple little caveats like, hey, this question might come up. Like, for example, we had a question in our game about I had made it to the middle island first, and then my son attacked me, and I played a trap card, so his building got toppled and mine stayed in the middle. I stole the achievement from him, but he still gets to roll those conquer dice and gain the benefit from those conquer dice. And that's not necessarily explicitly laid out in the conquer rule, but it is there on the last page of the rule book that kind of runs through that. And some of the flavor text where it shows the example and it says, where it's giving you just a little bit of a description of what a common turn looks like. There's some of those gotchas right there too. So with it being such a small rule book, go ahead and pay close attention. But when you sit down to play, I would literally say there's two type of turns. There's an income turn and there's an advanced turn. That's all you need to know right now. We're going to start with the first turn right now. Let's take an income turn. Let me show you what that means. We're going to go ahead and I would walk down that chart that's right there on the side and I'd say, all right, there's no one here, so we're not doing this one. There's no one here, we're not doing that. There's no one here, we're not doing that. Here's a one. Gain resources. What are your resources? Here they are. And point out the player mat. Point out that they get an exploration tile and point out that they get a tapestry card. Boom, your first turn is done. Good. Next time around, we'll get to the advanced turns. Have everyone do that. When you get to the advanced turn, be like, okay, now there's only 4 things that you have to choose from. Do you want to advance your civilization along civilization, military, technology, or science? And then the rule book explains what each one of those first actions does. And I think that's enough to get them, like you start to see repeating iconography. So you'd say, okay, so you're going to advance around science. Now this shows a dice. You're going to roll the dice. There's an X there. So what that means is you get to move down that track, but you don't gain the benefit. So it kind of stinks the first time, but you did make 2 moves for the cost of 1. That's good. And maybe the first, move wasn't necessarily going to benefit you, or you weren't thinking you wanted to go down that track in the first place. I think that's probably enough in terms of maybe when you give them their civilization mat, you kind of give like a high level that's really the hardest part in your first game is really trying to determine how best to use your civilization mat. So I think it might even be worth maybe taking 1 or 2 advanced turns and then saying, you guys want to, you got an idea how this goes. Do you want to go ahead and start back from scratch? What your civilization does? Do you know how it might be useful to you? I guess that's a long way of saying I think that's probably one of the best ways to teach the game is just start with there's 2 type of turns. Here's what we're going to do the first one all together. Everyone's done that. Okay, now your second turn, these are your 4 options. You just pick one of the 4. You really can't lose your game in your very first turn. Maybe I can, but you can't. All right. Dustin says, Jamie already mentioned in an interview on YouTube that he was considering an expansion for Tapestry. What kinds of things would you want out of an expansion since playing a few times now? Maybe a handicap to let me win. No. It's hard to say because I'm still in this state, even 6 or 7 games in now. I haven't played with every civilization yet. I think that's the low-hanging fruit. Jamie might have said that specifically, is more civilizations, but they're so varied that having not played them yet, I still feel like there's a lot of Tapestry to learn. I guess and I don't know how this would work into gameplay, but like the exploration and the fact that you're gaining, the first time you put a tile out and you gain the benefit that's on that tile, whether it's a worker or food, maybe it's hard, right? Because I want to say like maybe some kind of like story, or not necessarily story, but some story that you can tell by the resources you gain. Or but the whole idea of this game is it's supposed to be like we're looking at the over the entire duration of a civilization, right? I mean, we're discovering fire and going to the stars like within an hour and a half. So it's hard to say, I wish I had like an encounter like we have inside, that tells just a tiny little bit of a story. So I don't know that that works thematically, but I kind of like the idea of where I said it's kind of Flintstones like, and you got dinosaurs and you're watching TV and they've got cars, but they're pedaling their feet. Uh, Maybe just leaning into that, like maybe more almost fantasy technology. That I mean, like when I say fantasy technology, I mean maybe we are talking like a stone television or a um, geez, maybe digital paper, something weird like that. Not like e-ink, but like just some paper that's like, why does that have to be digital? I don't know. Some more anachronism, just to kind of steer hard into that. So you're like, listen, we're not dealing with Earth as you know it. We're not dealing with Earth. Things can happen in wacky and weird ways. So maybe something to steer into that. But at this point, I guess I don't think I found what Tapestry is missing, if anything at all. Um, so Asia, uh, says, "What is your favorite civilization and why?" And I really do love the meaning behind the Merrymakers. Their card is this one right here, and it says the Merrymakers frequently celebrate love and life. The longer the festival, the better. Um, I just that art is so nice, and I mean, maybe it's just how I feel about you know the stuff going on in the world right now, that I would love to see a little more love and celebration of love in life, and a little more respect for life, and a little more people caring about each other openly, and it not having to be something tremendously sad that makes us think about those things. So I love the meaning behind Merrymakers, and I love the fact that they like their celebrations to last. Um, I really like the puzzle behind the isolationists. Now, I went from, hey, we need more people togetherness, to stay off of my lawn with the isolationists. So it says, the isolationists want to be left alone. You start with 4 player tokens. And when you lay out one of your outposts, you can actually, fortify them. And in fortifying them, you can make sure they can't be toppled. But the cool thing about what they do is when you're playing those tiles down, you want to try and get your land types to match. So if you are connecting desert, you want that desert to connect through as many tiles as possible, because if you can connect up to 6 of those, where you have a tile, of tiles that you control, and all the land mass is the same type connected to each other, you can get up to 40 victory points, and that's huge. And I also kind of like the idea of not being able to be toppled. I don't know. I like the idea that you're just kind of building this fortified area that is just, like I said, stay off my lawn. So that's kind of cool. Wesley asked for expansion ideas, and I kind of just went over that. I don't have any idea of what it could need just yet. Um, Another gameplay where you focus more on the game than on the video itself. Jonathan, yes. Yes, I've definitely mentioned that, haven't I? I think it would be fun to go through and make another video, with the Shadow Empire, where I'm not necessarily explaining every move, and we're just kind of playing and keep it at a nice quick clip, and maybe get a game done quicker than we did the last time, but also kind of showing off the Shadow Empire and me paying closer attention to my game instead of what's Josh doing. How's the camera looking? Are we going to run out of space? How's the sound? Is anyone going to find this entertaining? Am I talking enough? Is he talking enough? So a game where I get out of my own head, I think that sounds like a fantastic idea. Finally, it would not be a question in the Tapestry Facebook group if we did not have Tim's question of where's my package. Tim, I don't know, man. It's on its way. I mean, you bought a copy, right? It's on its way. It'll be there. It'll be there shortly. Uh, Thankfully, probably for all of us, that is the last question. My girls are being quiet off camera and they are eager to get to a football game and hang out with some friends. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a day there. I loved taking these tapestry questions from you guys. Thanks for helping me make this week's The Mill. You guys were definitely the stars of this one. So thank you so much. As I say every week, take care of each other and yourself. It's very important, self-care. Um, just that. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other, and take care. Thank you so much for the feedback last week on that tapestry playthrough, and I will see you guys again next week. Bye.